What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Team Solemn Circus live video. The ban list just dropped. I'll be telling you guys the change, I guess, in the ban list here that I guess will just be mentioning real quick. So we have currently going to be doing a tier list. This is just going to be a quick remark of, after the ban list, both ban list sessions, but people are like, well, what's going to be going on? So we got yugioh and Kelbeck both get banned. We have Mathmech Circular got banned. We have Isolde getting banned. We have the Gozen rivalry, and there can only be one at 1. Snatch Steal at 1. Ib at 1. I don't think it's going to be doing much. We have Sunseed, Sun Avalon, and Sunvine Healer and Dryas both being at 1. We have my boy Unchained Soul of Sharavara. I'm going to say it one time correctly for you guys, for everyone in the comments saying it's, I always say shawarma. You get your one chime, so clip it and chip it. And then we got Rescue Ace Airlifter at 1 as well, hurting that Rescue Ace player, slapping them on the wrist. They do not get to search emergency here. Then we have Redox coming back, and as well as Orchest Harp Horror. We have all of our boys back other than Pendulum Boy over here. We don't have him. And then for the semi-limits, we have Pankratops, Speedroids, and Pretty Sleepy Memory there. And then for our unlimits, we got Infernity, Cashier, Unicorn, Mind Control, Desires, Judgment, Starter, as well as Upstart Goblin. And before we dive in, Upstart Goblin is actually a crazy, something to hit. But I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff in here that definitely will be mentioning why I don't think that card's actually as crazy as we think. But diving on in, we're going to start off with Kashtira here. I actually think Kashtira is going to be a strong tier 1.5. They do have lots of stuff they can play. I think this is like one of the only decks that can actually play with. Actually, I'm gonna lie. I'm putting it in tier 2. I think that Kashtira has lots of like good stuff that it can do now, especially with Unicorn being at 3. There's lots of being searched, and Fenrir did not get hit as well, which is kind of crazy when you look at it that way. And then we're going to be moving on to Lab. Lab is definitely tier 1. This deck is going to be absolutely insane. And with the new support that we're going to be seeing in Maze of Millennia, that transition rollback is going to make this deck even more broken. We saw that every single floodgate that this deck does not play didn't get hit, so we're going to be seeing it. And yes, of course, Pankratops will be kind of a problem, but this deck still has Skill Drain to be able to handle those floodgates. It's kind of one of the only decks that can actually play Skill Drain. And then we have the Synchron deck. I think Synchron deck's going to be also a tier 2. I find that with this whole meta, like we're going to be mentioning why these two are in tier 2, this whole meta is also going to be a Droll meta. So, we have these cards that make it come back. So it's going to be problematic with some of these decks that will be able to set up a bunch of this stuff. Which is why I don't actually think that Flu is going to be that good. I think Flu is going to be either in high Rogue or tier 2 status here. Like, yes, Flu is still a great deck. Shifter is still also in the meta. But unfortunately, they just don't have enough. Prosperity is still at 3, which is nice. Flute does have a lot, but without that barrier statue, they're playing with really fair cards. And we see X-Sister going to be putting it in high Rogue, kind of a weakened version of Flu. Might as well play Flu at that point. And yes, the traps are pretty good, but unfortunately not going to be the greatest. Then we have Salamangreats. I actually think this deck got debuffed. Putting it in the Rogue category here, I'll probably put it higher than Magnifica, but this deck got absolutely smashed. So unfortunately now we cannot play those cards like Rivalry and Gozen Match because of the fact that they got hit. So you only search one of it now, and it's really sacky. I know some players are still be playing it, but unfortunately now the Weasel Lock is not going to be that much of a real thing. They're able to continue playing unless you end up hard opening it, but I guess it is still a viable option as well. Pendulum. This is all Pendulum. I unfortunately think it's going to be Rogue. I know players are going to be picking it up like, oh, well, Pendulum, my Pendulum strategy. Yeah, Endymion, kind of still shit. Get hit with the drill, pass. Look at other stuff. We didn't even see Kieran come back. What's up with that, Konami? Come on, give us our boy Kieran back. The Magic Spectre Sport is coming out. You don't want us to play that card? Give us Kieran, boys. And then we have Makonko. Makonko is actually going to be a high represented deck. This deck did not get hit at all, and I think it's going to be quite a problem, especially with Diviner of the Herald. You're going to be able to send those Shufflers and other cards as well. I'm going to be able to just essentially do so much stuff, and it's going to be a sleeper deck that people are not going to be prepared for. Chimera. Chimera didn't get hit either, so we're going to put it once again in tier 1.5. This deck is still amazing, which is also going to bring me all the way to Branded. I think Branded is actually going to be just as much in tier 1. But the problem with Branded is this deck still loses to Ash Blossom, And Ash Blossom is going to be in every single person's main deck. It's going to be absolutely huge this format, especially with Labyrinth being tier 1 as well. Then we're going to be seeing Bestials. I think Bestials are actually going to be tier 1 as well, with Bestial Runic and other variants of the deck, Dragon Link included. Dragon Link is going to be very powerful once again. We didn't see any kind of changes to it. Of course, it also has some good matchups versus other stuff. Dragons will always be a very powerful deck. And then we got Speedroids. Speedroids is still rogue, boys. It's still rogue. Terratop is at 2, which I think is going to be a huge problem when it comes to Goblin Riders coming in the next set. Terratop is going to be a rank 3 or a link 2, which is very nice. But it's still going to be problematic. I'm just going to put our number 1 Circular, boys. Joshua Smith wanted it to happen, and they decided to say, yeah, enough is enough. Get gone, Circular. So Circular can pack it up and hit the road. This deck is going to be finally gone. I'm kind of glad about this. I'm not a big fan of Circular. For anyone who's playing the deck, I'm sorry for you guys, but that's kind of unfortunate. Fire King is going to also be tier 1. I think this deck is his absolute sleeper of a deck. A lot of players are playing it right now, and I'm really excited to see it. It did not get hit, which is obviously not going to get hit with the Populace, as well as new support coming very soon in the deck. Bonefire as well as Populace going to be able to make this deck even better, which is why we are going to be seeing it in tier 1. They want to be pushing new support, which is absolutely what they did. And then with the Infernoble, I actually think this could be a low rogue or pack it up category. With the loss of Isolde, this deck still does a lot, but unfortunately, it's now one of those 2 to 3 card combos, which do end up losing a lot of the times, like a Droll or a Nib as well. For Rika, it's unfortunately time to pack it up. I wish they would have hit Rika Con as well, but they did not. So I gotta say goodbye to the Sunseed stuff, and without the new what am I trying to say? Without the new plant stuff, it's not going to be seeing any much play until then. So it's time for that to pack it up, but it is what it is. And we're going to be going into Yama. Look what they did to my boy. I actually think this deck is still quite good. It just makes it so that it loses to hand traps. With the deck now, you only have 4 of your starters, or your 1-card starters, not counting Tour Guide. So you're running on 7 cards plus the 3 Prosperities. But the thing is now you don't have the Caesar access very easily as well, very easily without burning through your Yama, as well as your Yama is more acceptable to hand traps as well as your Tour Guide. So now Imperm and Veiler hurt the deck significantly more than it did prior because you could just chain to essentially dodge that. But now that you don't have it, there's just not that much they can do, and now Yama's just a huge Veiler target, which is pretty unfortunate for us. Then you have Rescue Ace. Rescue Ace is still going to be one of the best decks of the format, of course. This deck is not going to be dying. It essentially loses 2 spots in the deck, which you can replace with Prosperities or other cards as well. Airlifter was not always what the priority was. You always want to go for that Hydrant and Turbulence. And searching for your spell cards is good, but you can always find ways to get more of it. As well as, they are playing Rhoda, so now it's another copy of it. But then they actually dropped Rhoda because of the fact that you only have 1 copy of now. So if you draw it into your hand, you don't have anything else to search other than, I guess, your Impulse. Centurion. Centurion is actually going to be a high tier 1.5. This deck did not get touched. We still see the 1-card Calamity Lock. But with the other decks in the format, looking at Bestials, they're able to combat this, as well as Droll being very prevalent in the meta as well. When we're looking at all these decks, most of these decks do get hit with Droll, other than Labyrinth. But we're going to be seeing a lot of those cards, especially those side deck cards, going to be able to just stop all those draws. Now we're going to go to Runic. So this is actually going to be Runic as in a Runic deck. I think Runic is going to be tier 2. We saw Bestial Runic going to be very highly represented as well. But with Droll being in the format, it's definitely going to be pushed down. You could put it in tier 1.5. But Runic Sprite and all that kind of stuff is going to still be able to be playable there. Weren't playing any of those Floodgates and stuff like that. So just definitely making it so that a lot of other decks can just play now, especially by not being worried with those Floodgates. Not making going first quite as strong, air quotes there. Sprite got starter back to 3 like it should be. All we need is 1 elf, and this deck will be all good. But I think it's going to be, unfortunately, just a rogue deck. There's just a lot better decks that does exactly what Sprite does, just better. So I guess we're going to be seeing it in rogue. It definitely can do stuff, don't get me wrong. But when you have to pair it with other decks like the Runic stuff, as well as the Bestials or the Live Twins, it definitely makes the deck a lot better. The deck is just too fair. Now we're going to be looking at Sword Soul. Sword Soul is, once again, a tier 2. This deck is going to be good old reliable. It definitely can do stuff, but it's not groundbreaking. You're still going to set up your board, which can be quite good. It doesn't lose the draw as much, which is very nice, but we're going to be seeing a lot of hand traps in the format as well, so definitely be careful there. But I definitely could see this deck being a little bit higher when the time comes around. Looking at all this now, I actually think this is still going to be a tier 2 deck or a rogue deck, because of the fact that Droll, once again, will be relevant in the format, as well as Shifter being there. It definitely has to take a back seat. Plunder Patrol, I think Plunder is still in a rogue category. A good pilot can take this to a regionals and top with it, but we're not going to be seeing any YCS tops or anything like that. And I'm sorry to tell you guys, but just because you got 1 Orchest, 1 Harp, you're still going to pack it up. Stroke those harp strings goodbye, because Bestial Magnemite is going to be eating it away. And you're like, well, Solemn, you only have 1 Bestial Magnemite. We still have Sornier. We still have Druiswarm. This card is gone. Like, it might as well be on the ban list, because it is going to be in the banished zone. And then we have Tier Elements. Oh, good old Tier. Honestly, this deck is still going to be rogue. They're going to find ways to mill. It makes it Horus kind of mandatory in the deck now, but the deck is not dead. Not even dead regardless. You're still going to have a bunch of your ways. You still have the Tier Elements. Kashtira going to be able to do its stuff. And to be honest, I'm just glad they didn't put like Merly to 2. I'm just glad about that. Striker. Well, we now have 2 copies of Engage, as well as 3 copies of our good old spell Upstart Goblin. Don't really know how to feel about this, other than that Droll's going to hurt the deck a lot more, but this deck is still going to be quite good. So depending on what it is, we're going to see at tier 2. It's going to see some results, I think, but we shall see when the time comes, I suppose. Manadeum, tier 1. This deck, not tier 1. This deck is going to be very good. It's still very powerful. It has the same power limits of like Bestials for Dragon Link. And I think that this deck is going to be very good unless we start seeing Droll in the main deck. But even then, we might have to work around it. It could be tier 1.5, but it's just going to be very, very good. I might put it in 1.5. It has kind of the same power limits of Centurion there. Purely, I think Purely is going to be the top of tier 2, tier 1.5. This deck did lose Sleepy Memory to 2. So they lost 1 Sleepy Memory, and now they lost 3 spells of their 18s. This means that consistency-wise has hit a lot, and the deck now cannot just reveal 3 Sleepy, as well as it loses the potential of drawing 6. The deck is definitely not dead, but it is just significantly weakened. You're opening 1 more spell, you're hurting every time your Purely hits, you're missing 1 of them in the deck. It's just quite nice. Anyone who's ever played Purely and they lost a Purely spell to the Banish Zone, or it's been milled, definitely knows how hard it is to hit extra 1 Purely. And think about it that way. If you haven't even touched your deck yet, you're just down 1 spell card already, which a lot of people were complaining about prior. The Horus engine. The Horus engine is actually, Horus Volcanics, Horus Tier Elements, a bunch of other stuff. This deck is going to be tier 2, or actually Rogue, I should say. The bottom of Rogue, this deck can come all the way up, though. Tier Elements will still be played. I shouldn't mention that. But we are going to be seeing Horus going to be doing some stuff. Obviously, Horus is going to be played with those copies of the Orcus cards. They're going to be wanting to be splashed into it. This engine is still very good. And just not going to be, winning OICSs every weekend good. Trap Tricks, still pack it up, guys. This deck, as much as I love this deck, it's I'd rather play Orcus than I'd rather play Trap Tricks. Yes, the deck is still good. It still can be played, but there's just so much better options. And that's just going to be kind of it. Runic Bestial, I mentioned that earlier. I think the deck is going to be definitely tier 1.5, but I just don't think that the deck's going to be doing too much. This is not obviously, from the top of the list. I don't think these decks are going to be the best of the best. I could argue at least Purely is 1.5 as well. It's the very top or bottom of 1.5, but I think this doesn't have the consistency as well as like a bunch of other these decks. But unfortunately, I think that the biggest takeaways of this is lab. If we don't see that bunch of back row hate, I don't think we're going to be moving into a format where we're going to be seeing some of the main deck back row hate. But I definitely think going second will be more of a viability moving forward into the metagame with some of the decks with like Pankratops as well as like skill drain, or not skill drain, but mind drain going to be, or the mind control going to be at 3 here. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of going second builds. And then, of course, with going second builds, you'll probably also see cards like Lightning Storm as well in the main deck. Regardless, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comment section down below what other decks I forgot. And if I forgot them, let me know in the comment section. I will make sure to reply to those and tell you where I think that there would be in this tier list, as well as why. And hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe. Peace.